In this video, we are going to start reaching out to guests. No matter how scared you are, this is something that needs to happen sooner than later. Let's get started. Hey everyone, my name is Rich Cardona. I produce some of the world's top podcasts, and I am also a podcaster. Now it's time to just give you as much information as humanly possible about podcasting to help get you started. We don't have any courses. We don't have anything to sell you right now. We have a completely different full service agency. This is strictly education. We've covered two things so far. We've covered a pros and cons list of why to start a podcast. And then a second video, we covered all the questions you need to be asking yourself after you've kind of determined, yeah, I want to move forward, just to double check if this is legitimately an opportunity for you and something you could sustain. Now, this is going to be a podcast for my wife and I here in the local area. We're both business owners. It's a way for us to get to know other business owners. So I want to take advantage of the proximity and do in person. I have the equipment and those kinds of things. You do not have to do that. This is just something that I've been wanting to do, so we're going to do it. We are going to start with restaurants. Okay? Why? Because we like to go out to eat. Just like a lot of other people, we have our favorite places and we have places that we're not going to go back to. So the strategy here is just to inquire with some of these restaurants or the owners or their marketing departments is if they would be interested in being on a podcast that highlights local businesses. And that's literally all I'm going to do. I have about 5 or 6 places picked out and I'm going to call them. I'll let you hear it and we'll go from there. Now, before we get into that, obviously subscribe, ring the bell so that way you get notifications to keep your podcast knowledge going. But one really important aspect I want to tell you is why would I reach out to guests if I don't even have the podcast up and running yet? And the reason is this is where people really slow down. Booking guests for your podcast is not an easy endeavor because people have schedule changes, people change their mind, people are no-shows, people's schedules change pretty often and frequently, and then maybe it doesn't align with yours. So this is kind of like a merry-go-round of things. But what is the most important aspect of just reaching out to people is getting comfortable asking. Just like sales, just like marketing, just like anything else, you want to get used to painting the picture of what the podcast is about, what value it provides to them, what value it provides to the audience, and that's the most important thing you need to be doing. The more you have that conversation, the easier it's going to be. Another point I need to make before we start these phone calls is we have a podcast title picked out, and you do not need a podcast title picked out. Okay, I'm not even actually going to share it, and I'm going to try to make sure I don't even say it in the calls, but you don't need a podcast title picked out. That may make you feel like it's more legit, but if you're just starting a podcast, you're going to follow my lead and say some of the things I'm saying, which is just, like I said, is going to kind of give them an opportunity to understand what it's about and if they want to participate. And look, they want content. Okay, they are going to want content. And if you are a person that not only is going to highlight them, but be able to give them content, they might get a taste for it. And again, it's a very good networking opportunity. And that's why we're going to do it. Okay, so I have a card. I asked our server for the card of the owner or manager the other day, and I got it right here. I don't have the greatest reception in the house. And the only reason I'm doing it in an open area instead of my office is because I don't want to feel like it's scripted. I don't want to feel like this is formal. I want to just be. So I'm going to go ahead and call this manager's name. The restaurant manager his name is Vincent. I've not talked to him before, ever, and we're gonna go ahead and just give this a shot. There's no harm, no foul. There's literally no pressure. Someone says no, oh well, here we go.
6-9 is not available.
Hi, this message is for Vincent. My name is Rich Cardona. I live up here in Leland, and we've been to Dram Yard a few times, and we is my wife and I. And coincidentally, my wife and I are starting a podcast for the local area, highlighting local businesses, and we want to start with restaurants. We want to start with our favorite restaurants where we've had exceptional experiences, and we were wondering if that would be something Dram Yard would be interested in. So if so, please let me know, but we would be looking to probably interview one person. We'd have cameras, so this would be a video podcast. We would repurpose it. We'd put it on YouTube. You'd probably get some Facebook clips out of it. But we would give all those assets to you just for your own advertising or for your own marketing. But more importantly, this is just us wanting to have conversations with some other entrepreneurs and some of our favorite businesses in the local area. So my number is 760 and my name is Rich. My wife's name is Ann. Would love to hear back from you, Vincent, and let's see what happens. Thanks. And that's it. So on to the next. Hi, my name is Rich. I was wondering if I could speak to a manager? Nothing bad.
Sure. Yeah, I'm one of them.
Oh, awesome.
Diego.
Awesome. My wife and I moved here a couple years ago, and we started going to Floriana a few times, and we absolutely love it. We think it's the best Italian in the area. But she and I are both entrepreneurs, and I'm a podcast producer, and we are thinking of starting a new podcast highlighting local businesses. It's a video podcast, and we would love to see if you guys were interested in being a guest, whether it's a manager, I think the owner's in DC or something like that, or something along those lines. But that's what we want to do, and we'd give you all the assets afterwards to do whatever you want with. But we would love to highlight you guys.
Let me get the actually, if you can send more info over to I'll give you the email for it.
Okay.
Because that the owner will read that, and then he'll be able to kind of email you back and forth about that.
Sure.
It's going to be ilmflorianarestaurant.com.
What's his or her name, so that way I address it correctly?
It would be either Dean, who is our director of operations, or Jamie, who's the owner.
Okay, Dean or Jamie.
Cool, man. Good luck.
Later.
We'll see you soon.
Easy.
Kitchen Sink, how may I help you?
Hi, my name is Rich. I was calling to see if I could talk to a manager or owner. Nothing bad, of course.
Okay. That would be Jason, but he is on the line right now. Can I take a message?
Yeah, we actually ate there about a week and a half ago, I think, and I think we spoke with him. My wife and I are starting a podcast highlighting businesses in the local area or places that we love to eat, and we loved Kitchen Sink, and we wanted to see if he'd be interested in when we could maybe film a podcast and all that good stuff.
Okay. What was your name?
My name is Rich.
Rich?
Yep.
What's the number he can call you back at?
It's area code 760.
All right. I will have that here for him, and he'll give you a call back.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
I'm going.
Before I get into the next call, here's a couple things that I'm trying to accomplish in the very short time that I have these people on the phone. Number one, I know I'm not talking to the owner in most cases. The owner is just usually not going to be available. So I'm talking to a manager. I want the manager to get a message that they can convey upwards to make the owner know that it's worth their time. The way I do that is by simply flattering them. I'm not trying to just flatter them just because we legit love to go to these places. So by telling them, that we love it, we're patrons. We're patrons of the establishment. We're going to continue to be, and we're just offering them something. Now, the offer is where the reciprocity comes in. We are trying to be altruistic. We are trying to highlight your business. We are trying to get you content. We are trying to just get you the exposure that you deserve. And we want more people to become patrons of the same place. So that is kind of the reciprocity deal. Not that they will owe us anything whatsoever. They are going to be donating their valuable time, maybe during or after business hours, to get on this podcast. The question is, will they want to? Are they going to look at it like it's viable? There's no cost to them. The only cost is actual time. And if you're a small business or if you're a restaurant, and as more restaurants are competing in this town or this city, any exposure is better exposure. So that's what we're trying to accomplish. That's the goal behind the call. And I keep forgetting to mention that I am a podcaster or a producer. So I got to make sure I do that, because anyone could start a podcast just like you, but a lot of people don't want to be the first one. They want to know it's going to be worth their time and that it's going to feel professional. Here we go.
Smith, how can I help you?
Hi, my name is Rich. I was wondering if there was a manager or the owners there. I have a question, nothing bad whatsoever.
I actually don't have the owner here. I can see if there's a manager available.
Okay.
Just hold 1 sec for
Yeah,
me.
no problem.
What's it regarding?
A podcast that I wanted to do, a video podcast I wanted to do about Cheese Smith.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely going to be an owner question.
Okay.
If you want to go onto our website,
Okay.
let me double check and see what our email is. And that would probably be the best place to send information
Sure.
about that, and then they can review it and contact you.
Sounds good.
Okay, give me 1 sec. Let me double check on that for you, okay?
No problem. All right, I'm ready.
All right. It's info@cheesesmithco.com.
Okay. Okay, is there anyone a name I would address so that way it's a little bit more personal?
Molly and Brendan are the owners.
Okay.
They're a married couple.
Got it. Perfect. Yeah, we went there for the first time. We've been eyeing it for a little while, but we went there for the first time and just smashed a bunch of food. It was amazing. So we want to highlight local businesses and all that good stuff. So I'll convey that to Molly and Brendan.
Yeah, definitely. They'd definitely be the best people to speak with about that. So.
All right. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye. Okay, so literally kind of 0 for 4, but there's plenty of room for a yes here. I just haven't talked to the right people, and that's completely fine. This is how it goes. So what we'll do next for this video is I'll make an email that I'm going to send to them. So to each of these people, it's actually in my favor to do an email because it kind of spells out exactly like what we want, what they'll get, and why we want to do it, which is all about them. So I'll share that with you guys. We'll go over that. And then if and when I get the calls back, what I'll do is I'll just have to immediately after film with my phone and tell you how the conversation went, and we'll go from there. So that's it. Just getting after it. All you got to do is dial some numbers. That's it. Okay, everyone, as promised, here is an email I sent, and we're starting off very simply. Here is a subject line: video podcast about Cheesesmith. It answers a lot of questions, and it's supposed to make them open it, right? Okay, so very easy. Hello, Molly and Brandon. I got that because I asked what the owners' names were, and I got them. So it's already kind of starting off personal. The goal of the rest of the email is very, very simple. Answer who, what, when, where, and why. Okay, we don't have the when yet because they haven't agreed to it. But last week, my aunt and I went to eat at Cheesesmith, and we loved it, starting off with authenticity, starting off with compliments. We crushed everything we ate. Then we get into the who, what, and why. My wife, Ann Lee, and I were wondering if you'd be interested in a video podcast. That's the what. And why? Because we want to feature local businesses, and we're starting with restaurants. I am a podcaster and podcast producer of some incredible shows, but never done anything local. You should give your background there. If you are a new podcaster, put you're a new podcaster. If you're not a podcast producer of some incredible shows, then don't put that. Just put a little bit about yourself so that way they could get a little bit of your vibe. We were just trying to get some communication going here, so you don't need to go nuts there. Last thing I said is we would produce a full video and a couple short clips for YouTube and IG and give those to you at no cost. This is where the law of reciprocity comes in. We're telling them that's a good way to close out the email. Like, oh, by the way, you get all this stuff that you could use yourself. What do you think? That is it. That is literally it. So let's see what happens. I'm going to do that and be personal and have a personal anecdote for all the other ones I email, making sure that I talk to them about my unique experience there. You cannot just copy and paste this. That would be wrong. So we'll see what happens and see you in a little bit. Okay, so quick update for you guys. So one thing that I completely forgot was one of the very first businesses that gave us this idea, and they are called Boom Bilates. They're an ice cream place, and they are phenomenal here in Wilmington. So I ended up sending them a DM, and here it is. Hey, my name is Rich. We love Boom Bilates. My wife and I are both local business owners, and we're starting a podcast. And we want to highlight local businesses, and we would love to highlight yours. It's the video podcast. We would come and we would probably get some B-roll of the outside, the inside, some of the ice cream and gear or merch and all that kind of stuff, and then an interview about it. And we just want to highlight local businesses in the Wilmington area. We make social media clips out of it, a YouTube video out of it, and we'd give you all those assets, obviously at no cost. This is just us trying to get to know other businesses in Wilmington. So if you're down for this, or whoever has this, if you could put me in touch with the owner, would love to see if it's a possibility. Thanks. The other one, I left a message. The gentleman got the message and he actually DM'd me on Instagram as well. Here it is. So instead of just DMing back and forth, or even though he gave me his number, I could have texted him or called him. I was like, why don't I just go have lunch there? So I took my daughter and my aunt there, and there he was, the owner, Jason. We got to sit down and talk. I got to know him a little bit more, and we flushed it all out. Now, the funny thing is that's on the same street as Boom Bilates. So I went to Boom Bilates because they had their awesome, cool retro van there, and the owner happened to be there. And I said, what's up? He's like, yeah, let's do this. He's like, we'll be reopening next week or whatever. So essentially, today is a Friday. A week from today, I will be able to do at least 2 of the interviews. And the real good part about seeing these people in person was I got to ask them a couple questions, and they were very adamant about not being interviewed while customers are there, not because of distracting from the business, but because they're just not comfortable speaking in front of other people. They're operators. Okay. So that was good. So they're like, if we could do that before we open, and then you get B-rolls of all our stuff afterwards or later, that would be just fine. So that was perfect. I got that. That was the insight I needed. So we're good there. Another one we got was a response from Cheesesmith. They responded not long after I made the initial reach out. Glad to hear about your experience. The podcast sounds awesome, and we would love to be on it, essentially. So there you go. Like, look, I'm 3 for 3. Nothing crazy. You guys saw exactly what I wrote, what I DM'd. And then now I'm just basically asking what their availability is. Do you prefer business hours, et cetera, et cetera. There we go. So I'm essentially waiting on 1 or 2 businesses, but now I'm already lined up. Okay. So now beginning, and this is all real time. The time you've spent listening to me is the time I've spent working on this. I spent no outside time. So if we like aggregate all that time so far, is probably less than a half hour at most, probably more like under 20 minutes. That's all it took. That's all it took. And the reason I want to tell you that is not because I have some special ability to persuade people into being on a podcast, but people want attention. People want content. People want to highlight their businesses. Okay. And this is not just about a business podcast. This is about self-improvement podcast. This is a podcast about dieting. This is a podcast about comedy. This is a podcast about the news. People want to be interviewed. Like having a podcast like really makes it feel more authoritative, right? Or that they're going to have something that demonstrates that they're an industry expert, or just a medium where they can showcase their expertise. And that's why they're saying yes. Okay. So if you follow everything I followed so far, I can almost promise you, you're going to have identical results. So I will follow up with any new updates coming up. It's been 4 days since I initially started reaching out to people. I just reached out to a 6th place because I haven't heard back from 2 of them. I just wanted to show you one little thing I did. Again, I've done no extra work except what I'm about to show you, and it took me about 5 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so here we are. Here are the places. All I did was make a little spreadsheet because obviously as I start to reach out to people, it's going to matter to try and keep these things in order. I put the business name and then I put IC. That just means initial contact. When was the time that I initially reached out to them? The reason that matters is because you want to see how much time has elapsed before you have a response. I like to reward fast action takers. So that, or just it serves as a reminder to reach back out and not let it slip. I also have the method in which I reached out to them. The reason I have that is so some people respond in different ways. So sometimes a DM might work. Sometimes they don't respond to an email. Sometimes they email and don't respond to a DM. This helps me retrace our conversation whenever that may have happened. And then the point of contact, that's what POC stands for. So that's what I put there. And then LC is the last contact. When was the last time I contacted them? So there's the initial contact and the last contact, and then the recording date and status as we get geared up for that. Now, one of the funny things is I went to the kitchen sink after I had DM'd with the owner. And when I showed up there for lunch with my aunt and my daughter, he remembered me and he sat down and talked with us. And he was just telling me a bunch of things that were going on in the business, some good, some bad. I mean, all things that are just very normal in entrepreneurship. And we just talked about it. And it turns out we had some connections in Wilmington through church. And it was just really cool. Like this really kind of softens the mood, so to speak, as you get ready for a podcast. Now, a lot of you and I may not have that luxury if this is not kind of a local thing. I just want you to keep that in mind. But that's just one of those extra steps that a lot of people wouldn't necessarily be willing to do. I could continue to engage over DM and then just show up for the podcast, or I could build a small little relationship so that way it feels more comfortable when we go to record the actual podcast. And the reason I'm reaching out to a couple more, so I've heard back from 4 of them. I reached out to a couple more because I just want to make sure we could round it out. I want more options than not. And one quick final update. Again, this has only been 4 days in the making. Everything you've seen is only the amount of work I've done. I've done no extra anything. Is a videographer. So there was a videographer that I wanted to work with, but they just really wanted kind of stability, and we can't offer that right now. Like I have to look at the podcast as a startup, and you should too. So when you begin to outsource, like this is freelance work. They have to understand that you cannot guarantee hours. You have to be upfront with the rates that you can afford and go from there. So I found someone else, and this person is incredibly passionate, is a referral from a friend. They're working at a job that they don't necessarily love. They went to film school. They have experience with podcasting equipment, with video equipment, like big time. So, we kind of went back and forth and landed on a good price, and we're going to have him start with us on Friday when I believe we're going to record our first podcast. So that was a minor tweak. You should know that because I wasn't looking for cheaper per se, but it just kind of had to be that way once I realized I was probably going to be overpaying, and you just can't accommodate a freelancer. Okay. You cannot accommodate someone who needs hours and needs the stability. That's just not how it works. And unfortunately it didn't work out. So we got that set up. So Friday mornings, it looks like that's going to be our go-to day to film, and we'll go from there. So next step is just to lock in a couple for this week, and here away we go. Okay, back with a quick update. It seems like it's not going to be a value add too much to just kind of keep you up to date on the scheduling issues, but I will tell you this is exactly why we try and record a bunch of them in advance. So I'm going to record probably like 6 to 8 podcasts before we even release it, because in the background, I'll be doing more interviews. And the reason is tomorrow's the first podcast we're supposed to do, and they just texted me, and I'll go ahead and share it on the screen. Basically, he's just saying that they have a band that's coming to play, and that it might be a little bit stressful for them to get ready, and they might be anxious if we have to do it tomorrow morning, so they're looking for another date. Now, the one thing I want to mention here is we have a very set schedule, a legit constraint, and that constraint is our videographer is only available on Fridays. And then Anne, my wife, with the swim school, she has lessons all the time, with the exception of Friday morning to the early afternoon. So that's actually a good thing. Okay, that way it's more predictable. You don't want to get into this place where you're like, oh, we could do Tuesday at 1 p.m. Does that work for you? No, it's your recording day is this. And if they want to be on the podcast, then they will figure out a way to make sure that they could accommodate that time. So it's just better for you to have those kind of guardrails or those boundaries. Otherwise, things get kind of crazy. Plus, again, it's a true limitation because the videographer schedule. I don't want to kind of get into this place where we're asking him, we got a new guy, to do all kinds of different things or different hours. So there's that. So I have to look at next week's guy that we had scheduled and see if he can do this week. So I already messaged him, and this is how it goes. Okay, so we're going to end here, but this is why, if you're going to do an interview style podcast, you absolutely need a backlog, because without it, one cancellation can mean 1 week that you miss if you're not ahead of the game. And if you miss 1 week, then you might feel like, well, I'll get to it another time. And next thing you know, it turns into 3 weeks. And then next thing you know, like we talked about earlier, you got pod fade. Okay, so this is the most important thing I could share with you, is that scheduling is not as easy as it seems. People are people. People have businesses. People have life changes. People have events that come up out of the blue. And that's exactly what we're dealing with. So go ahead, like this video, subscribe to our channel, and ring the bell so you can get up-to-date podcast information. And the next video is going to be when we're actually going to record at a place. I will share with you what we're intending to achieve, how we're going to achieve it, and how it goes. All right, until next time, later.